There's a paradox that haunts modern relationships, one so subtle that most men overlook it until it's too late. We've been told our entire lives that women want vulnerability, that the key to a woman's heart is to open up, express your feelings, and share every shade of your soul. We've been sold the gospel of emotional transparency. Tell her how you feel, show her you care, wear your heart on your sleeve. But reality tells a different story. Because while modern culture rewards emotional openness in theory, female biology responds to something far older: emotional restraint. Not coldness for cruelty's sake, but coldness as composure, as self-possession, as the absence that breeds intrigue. This is the heart of cold attraction psychology, the strange but undeniable truth that women are often most drawn to the man who keeps his cards close, who doesn't react emotionally, who seems just out of reach. At first glance, this may seem counterintuitive. Wouldn't warmth attract more than distance? Wouldn't passion outweigh stillness? Yet we forget that women are not wired to respond logically. They are wired, biologically and psychologically, to feel their way into safety, power, and erotic mystery. In my latest audiobook, The Alchemy of Lust, we dive deep into the topic of sexual mastery. The man who remains emotionally stable, who doesn't chase validation or bleed vulnerability, radiates something primal: power. In ancient tribal environments, the man who remained calm under pressure, who didn't flinch when danger appeared, was the one most likely to protect, provide, and prevail. He didn't scream, he didn't cry for help. He acted, or he waited, with cold calculation. That man's presence, even in silence, carried weight. And that instinct, deep in the female psyche, still exists. Women instinctively trust and crave the man who doesn't panic, who doesn't reveal himself too easily, who doesn't need her validation to feel whole. This is the evolutionary foundation of cold attraction. The emotionally stable man wasn't just a partner, he was a signal of survival. His stoicism represented strength, his stillness meant clarity under fire, and his silence echoed with power. While other men cracked under pressure or became emotionally erratic, this man stayed rooted, unmoved, unreadable. And in the primitive female brain, wired to detect signs of strength or weakness in a potential mate, this made him irresistible, not because he was emotionally dead, but because his emotions were mastered, not spilled. This brings us to a critical distinction, one that every man must understand if he wants to unlock true masculine magnetism. There is a chasm between emotional availability and emotional mastery. Most men confuse the two. They think that pouring their hearts out, constantly expressing vulnerability, or chasing emotional closeness will earn them intimacy. But what it often does is erode polarity. When a man emotionally dumps his insecurities, his anxieties, or his over-eagerness onto a woman, he becomes her emotional mirror, not her leader. But the man who guides emotional energy, who remains calm when she spirals, who grounds the room with his presence, who feels but doesn't flail, becomes the emotional anchor she didn't know she needed. He becomes the man whose silence carries more meaning than another man's essays. Women don't want emotional chaos. They want emotional gravity. They don't want a man who shares everything. They want a man who chooses when to share, and even more importantly, when not to. This tension, this deliberate withholding of full emotional availability, isn't manipulation. It's masculine polarity. It's the oxygen to feminine fire. The more a woman must wonder what you're thinking, the deeper she sinks into imagination. And the more she imagines, the more she invests. In this dance, mystery becomes the aphrodisiac. A predictable man is a forgettable man. But a man whose moods are unreadable, whose actions are calculated, whose heart is protected behind the gate of purpose, that man becomes unforgettable. In The Alchemy of Lust, you'll be taken deep into the ancient and forgotten discipline of sexual transmutation, a principle once reserved for monks, warriors, kings, and creators. The cold man, doesn't chase. He doesn't explain. He doesn't overcompensate. He simply is. He is present, but not pressing. He is attentive, but not available. And most importantly, he never gives her full closure, because full closure kills the chase. And women are wired not for comfort, but for emotional tension. They fall in love in the gaps between words, in the silences between actions, in the suspense of the unknown. This is why women often fantasize about men who barely text them back, why they obsess over exes who never gave them emotional clarity, and why they write novels in their minds about men who barely spoke. Absence creates obsession. Stillness creates story. Coldness creates craving. And we've seen this pattern echoed in the archetypes that dominate fiction, film, and fantasy. Think of James Bond, unreadable, smooth, and unaffected. Thomas Shelby, a man of few words, colder than steel, whose emotional restraint breeds chaos and desire in every room he enters. Don Draper, distant, calculating, emotionally complex, but never emotionally chaotic. These men are dangerous, not because they are violent, but because they are unreadable. They do not beg, plead, or perform. They don't ask for permission. They don't emote for validation. They move through the world like kings without crowns, commanding, controlled, and cool. Now contrast them with the nice guy, the man who overshares, who constantly seeks reassurance, who confuses vulnerability with weakness, and who thinks love is earned through emotional exposure. This man thinks he's building intimacy, but what he's actually building is repulsion. He becomes too easy to understand, too safe to desire. His transparency becomes his undoing. Because what he gives too easily, she values too little. Women don't crave what they already possess. They crave what they can almost reach. And so, we return to the truth modern men must hear, even if it stings. He who reveals the least controls the most. Women are drawn not to emotional chaos, but to emotional discipline. To the man who could open up, but doesn't. To the man who feels, but never flinches. Coldness is not cruelty, it's composure. And composure is the final seduction. The cold man, when rooted in purpose and emotional mastery, doesn't repel women. He haunts them. He becomes the mystery they can't solve, the silence they can't stop analyzing, the absence that becomes louder than presence. And that is what drives her wild. To become the cold man is not to become numb. It is not to shut off your heart or bury your humanity beneath a mask of apathy. No, to master cold attraction is to build a fortress within yourself so strong that nothing external can shake it. It is to construct an inner citadel, brick by disciplined brick, where your emotions live, but never rule. A place where you observe your anger, your longing, even your fear, not as commands to obey, but as weather to endure. You feel it pass, you learn from it, but you do not become it. This is what we call emotional sovereignty, the ability to stand in the middle of chaos and remain unchanged, to possess feeling without being possessed by it. And to build this kind of mastery, you must train like a warrior of the mind. Journaling becomes your mirror. Stoic philosophy becomes your code. Shadow work becomes your battlefield, confronting the buried emotions you've ignored or indulged, and integrating them like a king who conquers his own demons. You begin to see your emotions not as truths, but as signals, like clouds passing over a mountain. They move, but the mountain remains. That mountain is who you become. And once this emotional discipline is in place, you begin to wield one of the most powerful weapons in masculine psychology, strategic silence. In a world that screams, he who whispers commands attention. The cold man doesn't rush to speak. He doesn't explain every action. He doesn't fill space with nervous chatter or digital breadcrumbs of insecurity. He waits. He watches. He speaks after he understands. This restraint builds tension. It makes your words valuable. It forces others, especially women, to lean in and listen, because when you do speak, it means something. Think about it. The man who texts back instantly, who replies with paragraphs, who apologizes before she even accuses. This man signals emotional neediness. But the man who replies with calm timing, who uses brevity like a blade, who doesn't flinch when she withdraws, this man signals power. Every word becomes currency. Spend it wisely, and you become rare. Spill it freely, and you become forgettable. From here, you enter the realm of frame control. And this is perhaps the most misunderstood dynamic in modern dating. Most men orbit the woman, emotionally, mentally, even spiritually. They adjust their moods based on hers. They follow her lead. They seek her approval like a lost boy chasing his mother's warmth. But the cold man stays centered. He holds the frame, not through dominance, but through unshakable presence. He doesn't match her chaos. He regulates it. He becomes the gravitational center, the eye of the storm, the stillness she unconsciously searches for. Women test a man's frame, not out of malice, but instinct. She pushes to see if you'll bend, if your logic will crumble under her emotion, if your foundation is solid or built on sand. The cold man passes these tests not by fighting them, but by remaining unmoved. She cries. He listens. She withdraws. He observes. She lashes out. He doesn't retaliate. He leads her back to equilibrium. This, paradoxically, creates safety. Because in a world full of emotionally reactive men, the one who remains stoic becomes a fortress, and fortresses are seductive. But this stoicism must never become robotic. This is where many men fail. They suppress so hard they forget to feel. But attraction is not born from stone. It's born from fire contained in steel. This leads us to the next principle, the erotic edge of danger. The cold man is not cold because he is lifeless. He is cold because he is capable of heat, but controls when and how to release it. A woman feels most alive when she is slightly off balance, when the man she desires is unpredictable, when he offers no guarantees, when he reveals just enough to stir the soul, but never enough to satisfy it fully. It's this lack of certainty that ignites feminine desire. The man who never promises tomorrow, who never declares undying love, who gives her moments, not ownership. This is the man who lingers in her mind long after he's gone. Predictability breeds boredom. But the man who could disappear tomorrow, not out of malice, but because he's free, keeps her addicted. She chases not the man, but the mystery. And within that mystery lies the art of controlled vulnerability. This is the cold man's secret weapon. He is not a stone wall. He is a fortress with a key. But the key is not handed out freely. He shows emotion with precision. He chooses when and how to reveal parts of himself. Vulnerability, in his hands, becomes a gift, not a burden. He doesn't cry on command. He doesn't bleed for validation. But in a rare moment, when he shares a story from his past, a scar he carries, a dream he pursues, it carries weight. Because it wasn't given to get her. It was given to connect on his terms. This 10% rule is powerful, revealed just enough to add depth, never enough to lose leverage. It's not dishonesty, it's discipline. Because the cold man understands that mystery sustains desire, and full exposure kills it. Finally, we arrive at the core of his magnetism, purpose over pleasure. The cold man isn't just stoic, silent, or strategic. He is driven. He has a mission, a craft, a vision that eclipses everything, including her. And this is what women feel before they even understand it, that they are not the center of his world, that he could enjoy her presence, even love her deeply, but he would never trade his purpose for her comfort. And that, more than flowers or poems or endless validation, is what makes a woman feel electric in his presence. When she senses that your mind is occupied by vision, that your time is guarded, that your soul is fed by something greater than her approval, she feels your value. She feels that she must rise to meet you, not the other way around. She knows that if she disrespects your time, your mission, or your standards, you will walk. Not to punish, but because you have somewhere to be. And men like that are unforgettable. So let us be clear. Mastering cold attraction is not about being heartless. It's about being whole. It's not about playing games. It's about playing your role as a man with intention. A man who doesn't react. A man who doesn't explain. A man who leads emotionally, physically, and spiritually. And in a world of noise, a man like that becomes music. In the end, she may meet 1,000 men. Some will chase her. Some will adore her. Some will give her the world. But the one she'll never forget, the one who will haunt her long after his name fades, is the man who didn't need her at all. The man whose silence spoke volumes. The man whose mystery made her feel alive. Be the calm storm. Be the enigma. Be the man whose silence speaks louder than words. Thus remember, we are Indeceptor. Becoming Indeceptor is the code they never wanted you to learn. A psychological war map for men, forbidden teachings fused with modern strategy for influence, dominance, and self-mastery. If you want peace, prepare for war.